Alright, grade 8. So this video is based on page 3 of your notes for Unit 6, Understanding Algebraic Expressions. So please highlight the definitions in the table at the top. A variable is a letter used to represent quantities or numbers. Variables take on different values. Constants are numbers that are alone, they don't have any variables or any letters attached. A coefficient is the number in front of a variable, and then a term is a set of coefficients and variables multiplied together. They are separated by a plus or a minus. Please, that is very, very, very important in a term. They are separated by a plus or a minus. Alright, so let's go through this and apply these definitions. So for the expression 2x plus 5, name firstly the constant. So the constant, according to the definition, is the one that does not have any variables, no letters attached to it. So the constant here must be 5. If it was negative 5, we put the minus, but because it's positive, we are going to leave off the positive symbol. The coefficient of x, so it means the number in front of x is 2. And what is the variable? What is the letter we're working with? It is x. Alright, so you are asked this sort of question in tests and exams when you have to break down and categorize different parts of the question. Alright, so there are, just so you know, there are two terms here, the 2x and the 5, because there is a plus separating them. So this term has a 2 times an x, and this term just has a positive 5. Okay, but the actual positive is the plus that is separating then the 2x and the 5. Alright, let's go on to the next one. It says given 9x squared plus 7x plus 3 plus y squared plus 13y. Complete the sentence using the list in the box. So now the box here, 9, 7x, 2, variable, constant, term. Please add in y squared there. Alright, so it says x is a, so from the box, variable. Okay, a variable. 3, look at 3 here. 3 is by itself. 3 is the constant. For C, something is the coefficient of x squared. So coefficient means number in front of x squared. 9 is the coefficient of x squared. Then 1 is the coefficient of. Now remember, we don't write ones in. So the only thing that's possible here is to have, because a coefficient must be attached to a letter, a variable. And so the only variable here that doesn't have a number in front of it is y squared, which means it's an invisible one. The exponent of y is, so careful, not y squared, of y, because there's a 1 missing there, it's invisible math. The exponent of y is 1. If they said the exponent of y squared, then you'd say 2. Alright, so that's just breaking down the definitions. And if we look, there's 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms, 5 terms here, because there are pluses in this case separating them. So pluses or minuses separating each of the groups, the categories, and so it's the x squareds, the x's, the constants, the y squareds, and the y's being separated into different terms. So there are 5 terms. They like to ask you that as well. So there are 5 terms here. Alright. So now moving on to talk more about the terms, we look at what's called a definition of an expression, the different types. We get 3 main types, and then I'm going to add on a 4th one here. So a monomial, a binomial, a trinomial, and then I want you to add on the side here a polynomial. Now this sounds like a real mouthful. Monomial, binomial, trinomial, polynomial. All it's saying is how many terms there are. So you look at the first, mono, bi, tri, poly. So mono is talking about 1 term. So for example, you have x or you have 2xy. You don't have any pluses or minuses. So no addition or subtraction. So you can get a negative single term. So for example, you could get something like this. Let's say question 2.1 in a test. How many terms does this have? Negative 2x. It is just one term. That negative belongs in front with the coefficient. It is its identity, not a subtraction. Alright, so terms are always separated by a plus or a minus. That's really important there. Okay. Then a binomial, think of a bicycle, right, has two terms. So this one, x minus y, so that's term 1, term 2, they are separated by a minus. Or 2x plus 1, that's term 1, term 2, they are separated by the plus sign there. Alright, for trinomial, think of triangle means 3 terms. So for example, within this first one, x plus y plus z. So there are pluses, addition, breaking up the terms. Or a is one term, minus 2c is the second term, plus 3m is the third term. Right, so let's practice using these categories. Oh wait, sorry, the polynomial. So the polynomial is when you have 4 or more terms. We just call it a polynomial. Alright, so poly meaning lots, polynomial. Right, so let's use this idea now. So it says classify each of these polynomials. So now what I just said, 4 or more terms, but poly is all of these are actually polynomials. Mono, bi, tri, but when we are talking about the polynomial in the category is if you have 4 or more terms, you don't now need to call it a quadromial, or if we're going to 8, octonial. We don't need to make up words like that. So for a polynomial or terms that we're looking at, the types of expressions can be monomial, binomial, trinomial. Then once you get beyond 4, 5, 6, we just use the general category called polynomial. Alright. Now, strictly speaking, the monomial shouldn't actually be a polynomial, alright, because it's only got one, it doesn't have more than one. But for the use of this worksheet here, we're going to classify according to the 3 main categories, monomial, binomial, trinomial. Again, if you have something bigger, then you would work with just the word polynomial. Alright, if you're not sure about this, when you get back to school, you can address it with your teacher, but focus on the monomial, binomial, trinomial for 1, 2, or 3. So over here, we have 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. How do I know they are terms? Because they are separated by pluses. So we have 3 terms. Then look at number 2. There is no addition or subtraction happening there. It's just one solid mass stuck together. So there's only 1. So the first one is a trinomial. And the second one is a monomial. Right, so then 2x y squared plus 3x squared y plus 9x. There are 3 different things. So we say there are 3 different terms. They are trinomials. Then we have this mass plus that mass. So the plus separates them into 2 terms. It's a binomial. Then 1, 2 for number 5. It is also a binomial. ABC, this is a monomial. No in between pluses or minuses. Then the next one's quite tricky because you look at this and it looks like it has a binomial within it. And then we have 1 and then we have 2. So it still has 3 terms within it, but within the first term there is an extra term. Alright, so there's y minus 2. But in the big question, the main part, okay, that is going to be a trinomial. Okay, so Don't worry about what's happening in the brackets. Worry about how many main pieces there are here. If you were to look within the bracket, there's a binomial within this first term. So that first term is a binomial because there's two things there separated by a minus. But when we're looking at the big question which we are being asked about, 1, 2, 3 main parts to it. Alright, now moving on to page 4 of your notes. And this will be the last page for this this video, and then the last video will be on adding and subtracting using variables. So an example is consider the expression. So this is called an expression. There's no equal signs given, so an expression is a mathematical sentence. Alright, mathematical sentence. So negative 3x squared plus 5y minus 4x minus 1. It says how many terms are there in the expression. So we're going to have a look. We've got that as one term. Again, the minus is not a minus as subtraction. It's a negative sign. Negative 3x squared. So we can't subtract nothing before it. So that must be the first term. Then there's a plus, and then there's the second term. And there's the third term and the fourth term. So how many terms are in this expression? There are 4 terms in the expression. Write down the coefficient of x. So now what's in front of x? Now be careful. You've got to take the entire piece that's in front of x. It's a negative 4. We need to know what's happening in front. So the minus must come with it to make the 4 negative. Then write down the coefficient of x squared. It is negative 3. It's everything in front of x squared directly touching it. Write down the constant. So what does not have a letter attached to it? It is negative 1. So in this case, the negative is the identity of the number. When we put it into the question, it makes a subtraction happen. So when we're working with negative numbers, it makes a subtraction happen in this expression. So then it says write down an algebraic expression. In other words, write this in a better way. It's saying x is being multiplied by 4, and then we are minusing 3. We did something similar at the beginning of this worksheet on page 1 with the word sums. So x times by 4, we say it's called 4x because we don't need the multiplication when we're working with variables. And please, we can't say x4. That's not the correct way of writing it in maths. We write the numbers, the coefficients first, and then minus 3. So x times 4 minus 3 is 4x minus 3. Okay, the last piece is the degree of the monomial. Now this sounds dreadful. All this is saying to you is what exponent is attached to the variable. Okay, what is the exponent attached to the variable? Alright, so find the degree of each of the following monomials, and then we're going to be doing the degree of each of the following polynomials. Alright, so the sum of the exponents of the variable, so the degree of each monomial. So look only at the variables, that is 2. Only at the variables, that is 4, 7, 8. There is no variable, so it could be, let's say, x to the 0, y to the 0, p to the 0. Because remember, when anything is raised to the power of 0, we are working with it's equal to 1. Alright, so we don't have a variable, so it's going to be equal to 0. Then it says the largest exponents of the term for the degree of a polynomial. Okay, so there's a bit of a difference here. So for a monomial, we take the sum of all the letters exponents. For a polynomial, so a tri, if you have 4, 5, 6, etc. terms. So anything that has more than one, because remember I said in the with the previous page, a monomial is technically not a polynomial because it's only got one term. Poly means many, so it's 2 or more, but we have a special name for 2, it's binomial, a special name for 3, it's trinomial, so 4, 5, 6 onwards we just call it a polynomial. But here we take the largest exponent of all of the terms. Okay, so for a polynomial you find the one with the largest exponent, and that's called the degree. Okay, so for this one, 8x squared, there's a letter x to the 1. So the highest is 2. So the degree of a polynomial is 2. Then for the next one, 1, 2, 3, also a trinomial. We look, there's y7, y4, then we have x4, m to the power of 4. Alright, so what is the highest of each of the terms? So now let's look. That is 7, that is 4, and what is that together? 8. Even though they're not the same base, we're not worrying about their base, we're worrying about their exponents. Alright, so we're not adding them in the question, we're just using it as a side note. If it was something like this, y to the 7 plus 6y to the 4 plus 3x cubed, then you'd say 7 is the highest of all the terms. So not of all the letters, of all the terms. So that's why we're looking at term 1, term 2, term 3. And you collectively group each of them. Right, so we can't do that for the monomial because there's only one term. So we take the sum of each. But for the polynomial, make sure you've summed up each and then take the highest of the 3. Okay, so if it was y to the 7 plus 6y to the 4 plus 3x to m1, then that would be 7, that would be 4. We just worry about the exponents, and together that would be 3 for the x and the m. So you're counting how many exponents you have in each term. Okay, so it's not the exponent rules where we are adding exponents of like bases being multiplied. Okay, it's a little bit different there. So in your homework exercise for 6.2, let's just run through it quickly. It's on page 62 in your books. So the first question is write down whether these expressions are monomials, binomials, or trinomials. And then when we're working, it says write down an algebraic expression for each of the following, like we just did. Write down the value of the expressions in question 2 if, so there's a substitution. Write down the algebraic expressions for these word rules, some more word sums. Then they give you this expression, 3x squared plus 12x minus 25. Alright, so it says how many terms are there in this expression. So you need to count 1, 2, 3. Okay, then they ask you about the coefficient and the value of the constant term. Then you have to do question 8 and question 9. 8 and question 9. Again, it is talking about changing words into algebraic language as such. Okay, there isn't one about the degree of the polynomial. That might come later. Yeah, I think that will come a little bit later again. Okay, so that is it for this video. The next video is going to be covering the addition and subtraction of variables using the algebraic laws. Okay, so get started on exercise 6.2.